There is today in occupied Palestine a deeply discriminatory dual legal and political system that privileges the Israeli Jewish settlers living in the 300 illegal Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. These colonial settlements, which constitute an obstacle to any form of justice in the occupied land, are inhabited by extremist Israeli settlers whose everyday violence against the Palestinians and their property has its unbearable toll. Palestinian farmers no longer have access to their farmlands and olive groves. Palestinian passengers have no security on the roads.
There are so many grave and serious violations that stem from this colonial act on the ground, and the examples are ample and so many that hits all aspects of Palestinian life, the social aspects, economic aspects, security aspects.
Clear enough is the lack of rights of people living in the same vicinity, but separated by walls, checkpoints, and roads. There are more than 3 million Palestinians living under an oppressive rule of institutional racial discrimination, and without a path to justice and a genuine Palestinian state that the world has long promised is their right.
Israel is giving total freedom to the army and to the terrorist settlers who are killing the Palestinian people in broad daylight, looting their land and their water, burning and demolishing their homes, compelling them to pay for the demolition, or forcing them to destroy their homes with their own hands and uproot their trees. All this with an official protection.
Internationally understood legal definition of apartheid, the system of institutionalized racial segregation practiced in South Africa prior to its dismantling in the early 1990s, is what the Palestinians are going through these days. Such reality is described by several international human rights reports, the last of which was that of Amnesty International.
What has struck me is how the system and the crimes of apartheid have been internalized within the system. It's almost a silent violence. It is a violence that eats at the soul of people and of communities. It is a violence that destroys the sense of being, the sense of belonging. It is a violence that people can very easily ignore if they want to ignore it, because it is so intricate, it is so weaved in the way institutions work.
Israel's military rule in the occupied Palestinian territory has been deliberately built with the intention of enduring facts on the ground to demographically engineer a permanent and illegal Israeli sovereign claim over occupied territory, while confining Palestinians in smaller and more confined reserves of disconnected Pantostans.
It is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
And as it will be very clear that under the rule of Israel there will be two classes, one Jewish which will gain all the rights and the other one which will have no rights whatsoever, this creates a new reality both for us Israelis and for the world. And now it's about the world to decide, will he be ready to accept another apartheid state?
Leading international figures including former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, South African Foreign Minister Nelly Bender have all described Israel's occupation as apartheid.
Having experienced apartheid in South Africa, the images of Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, as well as the violent clashes between armed security forces and defenseless protesters, are reminiscent of events that took place in Sophiatown and District 6 between 1955 and 1965 in apartheid South Africa.
Inhuman acts, arbitrary and extrajudicial killings, torture, the denial of fundamental rights, and abysmal child mortality rates, collective punishment, and abusive military court system and home demolitions are committed by Israel without facing serious objection by the international community, which indeed bears much responsibility for the present situation.
There is a legal obligation in international law for every state to do everything in its capacity in order to get and force a state that is violating international humanitarian law and violating basic rules of human rights to stop these violations. Unfortunately, we see that in the current international community, especially in the United Nations Security Council, states are not taking this responsibility seriously. Even though in its advisory opinion in 2004, the International Court of Justice stated that every state has obligations in order to stop the Israeli violations of human rights and international humanitarian law, those violations that were taking place because of the building of the wall that Israel constructed in the occupied territory. Many states have totally ignored this call from the International Court of Justice, and they continue to do that.
Other steps are taken by the Israeli apartheid regime to ensure Jewish domination, including a state policy of separation of Palestinians between the West Bank and Gaza, which prevents the movement of people and goods within the OPT. 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza, described regularly as an open-air prison, without adequate access to power, water, or health, with a collapsing economy, and with no ability to freely travel to the rest of Palestine or the outside world.
Gazan doctors are also denied from access to the international conferences which they can meet professionals renowned in medicine and learn from their extensive expertise. Young Gazan students do not fall apart to get offers from international prestigious top-ranking universities. However, getting a visa or a permit to leave the country can be quite daunting.
A stated aim of the Israeli apartheid regime is to ensure that Jewish Israelis maintain domination across Israel and the OPT. The Knesset in 2018 passed a law with constitutional status affirming Israel as the nation-state of the Jewish people, declaring that within that territory the right to self-determination is unique to the Jewish people, and establishing Jewish settlement as a national value.
Israel, everybody knows now, it's an apartheid, the state that is having an apartheid regime, but still the image is it is a democracy. This image is far from the reality. This is why we try to meet a lot of people and to try to bring the truth, to try to bring our perception of the true situation. While when the victim is an Arab or a Palestinian, they care less. This is the whole issue. This racist, double standard society must change. We believe in human rights as universally human rights. We think that human rights belongs to everyone, no matter what his color is or his ethnicity or any other identity. We struggle for justice, peace, and equality for all people. This is what we also expect from those who believe in human rights to do the same. When we talk about the settlers, we should remind everyone that this is not a small, extreme group of people who worked independently. The settlers are totally supported by the Israeli government. The Prime Minister in the state of Israel, sir, has been the CEO of the settler. He's a settler, he was the leader, one of the most important leaders for the settlements in the West Bank. They have a few ministers who are settlers, they have a few members of the Knesset who are settlers, and they are totally supported by the vast majority of the Zionist parties in the Israeli Knesset.
This policy, which aims to maximize Jewish-Israeli control over land, concentrates the majority of Palestinians into dense, underserved enclaves and restricts their access to land and housing while nurturing the growth of nearby Jewish communities.
So we can't no more enter our lands. If you want to get into your land, you need to wait for months, for years maybe, or you will be just prevented to see it. it turned to settlements. 12 years ago, there were just maybe 4 or 6 buildings here. Now look at it, it's bigger than our village. Our village it has nearly 200 years of history, and this settlement has just 10 or 12 years, and it's bigger than us, and it will get bigger and bigger with time. We know that one day they won't get enough of the lands they took, they will need more. And they will move the street they put in purpose. They didn't build a wall, they put a street because they know they will need more. They will just, I don't know, maybe they put it here, maybe they will take some of our houses like they did in the village next to us.
Next is Jerusalem, which Israel considers part of its sovereign territory but remains occupied territory under international law. Israel provides the vast majority of the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians living there with a legal status that weakens their residency rights by conditioning them on the individual's connections to the city, among other factors. This level of discrimination amounts to systematic oppression.
The Israeli measures use the legal system in order to control and hegemonize the Palestinian people. We can see, for example, here in Jerusalem, that the Israeli law uses several regulations in a way that leads to several Palestinians being having their residences revoked, being collectively punished for things that they were never part of and they never did, home demolitions, imprisonment, torture, etc. All of these types of policies are focused on the Palestinian population only, and you can see that at the same time, Israel is continuously building roads, building settlements illegal settlements for the Jewish population. So looking at the way, this is of course Jerusalem's only an example, but we could look further within the area controlled by this regime and find that the regime is on a continuous basis creating this hegemony, trying to control demography, especially when it comes to the Palestinians not having the ability to grow in numbers as well as in territory, in the territory that they are able to use and utilize for their daily lives.
Further, the manifestations of the Israeli apartheid system in Jerusalem appear in the violation of the Palestinian students and their families' right to choose the curricula they prefer. Israel imposes its own curricula on the Palestinians of Jerusalem to wipe off the Palestinians' narrative and national identity and to continue the Judaization process of Jerusalem, a policy the Palestinians are determined to defeat.
Israel is a state of racism when they offer all facilities for their children, all education facilities. They deprive the Palestinians from their rights to have friendly school buildings. They deprive them from choosing their curricula. They deprive them from reaching their schools safely while they have all the facilities for their children.
All of these abuses, including categorical denials of building permits, mass residency revocations or restrictions, and large-scale land confiscations, have no legitimate security justifications. The extent of restrictions on movement and civil rights fail any responsible balancing test between security concerns and the severity of the underlying rights abuse.
Israel is dancing with death. What's happening is actually a dance of death. Since last year up to now, Israel wants to pursue two objectives. One, fragment the Palestinian people. 48, West Bank, Gaza, refugee camps, diaspora within the Arab world, and diaspora in Europe, America, and the rest of the world. That's number one. Number two, they want Palestinians to give up their quest for freedom, liberty, ending the occupation, and living like normal human beings. Extreme violence and destruction against the Palestinians taking place assure Israeli right wing that Israel is taking every measure to suppress the Palestinians.